The first story comes from a college student named Marcus who lived alone in a small basement apartment just outside a quiet suburban town. The apartment wasn't particularly nice, but it was cheap, which mattered more to Marcus than comfort. The ceilings were low, the walls were thin, and the only window in his bedroom sat high up near the ceiling where it barely let in any daylight. Marcus had experienced sleep paralysis a few times before in his life, but it had always been brief and harmless. He would wake up unable to move for a few seconds, feel a little panic, then regain control of his body and fall back asleep. It was unpleasant, but nothing he couldn't handle. One night, after staying up late finishing an assignment, Marcus finally went to bed around 2 in the morning. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of an old refrigerator in the kitchen and the distant sound of cars passing somewhere above street level. Sometime later, he woke up. At first, he didn't understand why. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim blue glow coming from the small window near the ceiling. The room felt unusually cold. Then he tried to roll onto his side. His body didn't move. Marcus instantly recognized the feeling: sleep paralysis. He sighed internally, trying not to panic. The best thing to do during these episodes was to stay calm and wait for it to pass. But something felt different this time. There was a strange pressure in the room, not on his chest exactly, but around him, like the air itself had become heavier. Then he heard something, a slow creaking sound. It came from the hallway just outside his bedroom. Marcus stared toward the partially open door across the room. The hallway light had been turned off before he went to sleep, leaving the doorway filled with darkness. The creaking sound came again. Footsteps. Slow footsteps. Marcus felt his heart begin to race. He told himself it had to be the neighbors upstairs. The house was old. Sounds traveled strangely through the walls. But the footsteps were getting louder, closer, and they were definitely coming from the hallway inside his apartment. The bedroom door slowly creaked open wider. Marcus's breathing became shallow. Something stood in the doorway. At first, it looked like nothing more than a shadow, but as Marcus stared at it, his eyes began to adjust. It was a person, or at least something shaped like one. The figure was tall, unusually tall for the size of the doorway. Its head nearly brushed the top of the frame. It stood completely still, watching him. Marcus tried to move, tried to speak, but his body remained frozen. The figure slowly stepped into the room. Its movement was wrong. It didn't look like normal walking. It almost seemed to glide across the floor. The room felt colder with every step it took. Marcus focused on its face, but there wasn't one. Where its face should have been, there was only darkness, a blank, smooth void. The figure stopped at the foot of the bed. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then the thing leaned slightly forward, and a quiet voice whispered from somewhere within the darkness where its face should have been. "You're awake earlier than the others." The moment the words finished, Marcus suddenly regained control of his body. He bolted upright in bed, gasping. The room was empty, the doorway was open, and the hallway light was now on. Marcus stared at it for several seconds, confused. He was absolutely certain the light had been off before he fell asleep. But what disturbed him more happened the next morning. When he stepped into the hallway, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. Several long scratch marks running along the inside of the wall, starting near the front door and ending just outside his bedroom. The second story involves a woman named Claire who had recently moved into a new apartment after starting a job in another city. The building was modern and clean, and for the first few weeks, everything about her new place seemed completely normal. Claire had never experienced sleep paralysis before. That changed one night. She had fallen asleep early after an exhausting day at work. Sometime during the night, she suddenly woke up and immediately realized something was wrong. She couldn't move. Her arms, her legs, even her neck felt completely locked in place. Her heart started racing. She had heard of sleep paralysis before, but experiencing it firsthand was far more terrifying than she had imagined. Her bedroom was dimly lit by a faint streetlight outside the window. As she stared toward the ceiling, she noticed something moving in the corner of the room. A shadow. At first, it looked like it might be the curtain moving in the wind, but the shadow slowly peeled itself away from the wall. It was shaped like a person, tall and thin, standing silently in the corner. Claire tried to scream, but no sound came out. The shadow slowly turned its head toward her. Then it began walking. Each step was silent. As it got closer, Claire realized it wasn't a shadow from the room, it was something darker than the darkness around it, a human shape made entirely of blackness. It stopped beside her bed. Then it slowly leaned down until its face was inches from hers. Claire couldn't see any features, just darkness. Then she heard a whisper, "Not this one." The shadow straightened and slowly stepped away from the bed. It walked toward the bedroom door. Just before reaching it, the figure turned back toward her one last time. Then it disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. A moment later, Claire regained control of her body. She immediately turned on the lamp beside her bed. The room was empty, but the bedroom door was open. She was certain she had closed it before going to sleep. The next morning, she mentioned the experience to her neighbor in the hallway. The neighbor laughed nervously and said something strange. "You're not the first person in that apartment who said something like that." The third story comes from a man named Daniel who worked overnight security at a storage facility. His irregular sleep schedule meant he often slept during the late morning or early afternoon. One afternoon, he fell asleep on the couch in his living room after finishing a long shift. The sun was still shining through the windows when he suddenly woke up. But he couldn't move. Sleep paralysis again. Daniel had dealt with it several times before, so he wasn't immediately frightened. Until he noticed something standing near the front door. A child. A small boy stood near the wall, staring at him. The boy looked around 8 or 9 years old. He wore strange clothing that looked old-fashioned, almost like something from decades ago. Daniel tried to move his arms. Nothing happened. The boy slowly walked toward the couch. As he stepped closer, Daniel noticed the boy's eyes. They were completely white. No pupils, no color. Just blank white eyes staring straight at him. The boy stopped beside the couch and tilted his head curiously. Then he spoke in a quiet voice. "You can see me." Daniel tried to respond, but his voice wouldn't work. The boy glanced nervously toward the hallway. Then he looked back at Daniel. "You shouldn't be awake yet." Daniel felt a chill run through his body. Heavy footsteps echoed somewhere down the hallway. The boy's expression changed instantly. Fear. "They're coming," he whispered. The footsteps grew louder, slow, heavy, not human. The boy leaned closer to Daniel and whispered quickly, "Pretend you're asleep." The hallway footsteps stopped just outside the living room. Daniel squeezed his eyes shut. The air suddenly felt colder. Something entered the room. He could hear it breathing. Slow, deep. A low voice spoke somewhere near the couch. "He sees." Another voice answered from farther away. "Then we'll take him next time." Several seconds passed. Then the cold feeling vanished. Daniel opened his eyes. The room was empty. No boy, no shadows, nothing. But when Daniel checked the security cameras in his apartment later that evening, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. The footage showed him lying alone on the couch, frozen, unable to move. But the camera microphone had still recorded sound, and clearly audible in the background were two voices speaking, right beside him. If you liked these stories, subscribe to the channel and write a comment about your scary story.